Tuesday Night Touchdown Podcast with your hosts, Reese Downing and Jacob Workman.
What's going on, guys? It is TNT Tuesday Night Touchdown Podcast, NFL and NCAA edition. We are covering both the division round and the national championship picks this week in one episode. With me, as always, is the fine citizen, Mr. Jacob Workman. Jake, how's it going, brother?
It's going good, other than we're down to one college football game left. That's one of the worst things of all. And of all things, it's Notre Dame and Ohio State, too, which makes it real wonderful for me. But it is what it is. Should be a good championship game. Looking forward to it. And most importantly, Saturday night, the Lions start the road to New Orleans.
Yes, sir. Well, we are going to jump into the NFL first, but knowing that you love Notre Dame so much, we brought one of the super fans back with us, Mr. Carter. Thank you for joining us.
What's going on, guys? Let's go Irish.
Unfortunately,
the one and only helmet pick we've ever had on this show.
That is true. Still to this day, the only helmet
Didn't
pick
work
we've
out
had.
well for me.
All right, well, we'll see if you break it out later in the episode. Unfortunately, your counterpart, Scott, couldn't make it. He did give us our picks. We'll read those off as we get through them. We do have a somewhat familiar face. He's joined us at least once or twice before in the past. Big Ike Houston, big Chiefs fan. Ike, how's it going, man? Thanks for joining us.
Good. Looking forward to a good week of football. Probably last week is probably the best week of football of the season, but this one's got to be close. National championship game and the division round, 4 good matchups, really.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got some good games coming up. Let's start off by recapping what happened last week. Jake finished with a record of 3-3. Scott finished at 4-2. Carter finished at 3-3, and I finished at 2-4. Gambled on that Green Bay game and lost. Let's kick things off with some wild card results. We're gonna recap each one of the games. Starting off with Houston. Houston took advantage of an off day from Justin Herbert as the Texans defeated the Chargers 32-12. Herbert had protected the ball pretty much all year, only throwing 3 interceptions during the regular season in total and never throwing more than 2 in a game. But Saturday, he was picked off 4 times. Derek Stingley Jr. had 2 interceptions. Ricky Kamari Lassiter added a diving interception to his resume, and Eric Murray had the biggest pick of the game, taking his interception back 38 yards for a touchdown with 13 seconds left in the third. CJ Stroud had a pretty serviceable game. He finished 22 of 33 for 283 yards and a touchdown to Nico Collins, who finished with 7 catches for 112 in the score. Joe Mixon also had a solid game, finishing with 106 yards and a touchdown. Texans ended up with 429 yards of total offense, the 3rd worst outing of the season for Harbaugh's Chargers. Houston moves on. They're traveling to Kansas City to play the Chiefs on Saturday. Jake, what were your thoughts on the Texans-Chargers game?
I was actually pretty surprised by it. I know a lot of us did all of us pick the Chargers last week? I know everyone was pretty heavy on the Chargers in that game, and Houston kind of went back to beginning of season form and played like a team that we really weren't sure we were going to see after they had all those injuries. It was pretty impressive to me. I was really shocked that Harbaugh did not have that team as prepared as I thought they were going to be for that. But Houston does have the talent. It's just they haven't shown it much recently, and I still think they're a team you do kind of have to fear. I don't think the Chiefs are going to be taking them lightly. I know Travis Kelce said on the podcast that like he was like, this team is ridiculous. He was like, this is not really a team we want to see. So I think that win woke up the Chiefs. I think that'll help them a little bit too, because like we said, Houston's been struggling a little bit this year. I will say though, Goff did it. We went there on was it a Thursday night? I think we went to Houston. I don't remember. It was a primetime game. We went to Sunday night. We went to Houston. Goff threw like 5 picks. We did end up winning the game. Herbert threw 4 picks, and there was another game they had where they had another big time quarterback like 3 or 4 picks. So, Mahomes does generally play pretty risky too. So I'm kind of interested to see how that ends up. But I still think the Chiefs are in pretty good shape. But it was very surprising.
Yeah, we're going to get into the picks between the Chiefs and the Texans here in a little bit. But Ike, what were your thoughts on the game and thoughts as you guys approach your first playoff matchup of the season?
Exactly what Jacob just said. I'm glad that the Chiefs play them this week and not last week, because that was a totally different team that's been there from the past 6-7 weeks. They showed some swagger. They showed some confidence. Like that stuff, momentum. That stuff matters. You don't feel it does, but by second interception, you just look at the body language on the sidelines, and they were in it. They were prepared. Harbaugh is usually prepared, but his team looked lost. And a dangerous, confident team is never an easy out.
Absolutely. Carter, you got anything? Carter looks like he might be frozen. We'll
He's weekend at Bernie's right now.
Yeah, Carter is officially weekend at Bernie's. So we'll move on to the next game.
We'll come back to him. Yeah,
we'll come back to him. Yeah. So the next game, Baltimore jumped out to an early lead, heading into halftime up 21-0, and the Steelers were never able to recover as the Ravens beat the Steelers 28-14. Lamar Jackson finished 16-21 for 175 and 2 touchdowns in the air while adding another 81 yards on the ground. It was really the rushing attack that the stout Dealers defense couldn't slow down, as Derrick Henry averaged 7.2 yards per carry, finishing with 186 yards and 2 scores. The Ravens defense earned a shout out in their own right as they held the Steelers to just 29 total rushing yards. Pittsburgh heads home and has now dropped their 6th straight postseason game, while the Ravens head north and will battle the Buffalo Bills in Orchard Park on Sunday night. Carter, are you back with us, man?
I think so.
Yes. All right. We can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
Good.
You guys just started loading and I lost you.
Yeah, it's all good. Recapping the Ravens Steelers matchup, what were your thoughts on the Ravens 14-point win?
It was about what I expected. I mean, I think I took the Steelers to cover, but they're just completely outmanned. I think the Ravens might be the class of the AFC, and the Steelers just completely inept on offense. I can't believe Arthur Smith is getting more head coaching interviews. I don't know if he's got dirt on someone or what's going on with that.
Ike, what were your thoughts on the game?
Yeah, I mean, the Steelers were outclassed. I think we all kind of, I guess Carter picked them in the points, but they haven't looked good all year.
I was just say I did too, because it was so big. I think it was like 9.5.
I mean, 9.5 in the playoff is a huge number, and that's I think the Steelers have beaten the Ravens like 8 of the last 9. Is that true? So, I mean, I guess I get it, but I mean, the Ravens. I don't know if I'd say they're the class of the AFC, but they're the team I'm most scared to play next week if it comes down to that. Derrick Henry was the perfect. I mean, we talked about that. You guys talked about in the preseason. He's a perfect fit. He makes that team nearly unstoppable, at least on offense, and the defenses look good. So, I mean, it's about as expected. One thing I guess we can talk about it when we get to the matchup this week, but is Zay Flowers supposed to be back this week? Is he practicing?
He hasn't practiced yet.
Yeah, I don't think he's practiced yet, but that could just be keeping him on the sidelines to make sure that he's healthy for the game this weekend.
Gotcha.
Jake, you got anything on the Steelers-Ravens game?
Not really, other than I thought it was just god-awful. The Steelers, to me, are an interesting situation because they win. It's kind of like, what was the dude with the Jeff Fisher? Like, they win, but, like, they don't win. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they're successful, but in the playoffs, they just do nothing. So it's kind of weird. I don't know what you exactly do in that situation. I know Tomlin's generally loved, but it seems like the fans are turning on him. So I don't know. That's a bad situation. I don't really know what you do there. And neither quarterback is signed. So they have a lot of issues right now. No Fields, no Wilson. I mean, do you throw money at Darnold, I guess? Like, I don't think Darnold's successful with that team. So I don't know what they do, to be honest. The offseason is going to be very interesting for that team.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to have to invest in some guys on offense other than just George Pickens if they're going to pick up anything offensively there. I definitely don't see him retaining both Fields and Wilson, but we'll see what happens. I did take a look to see the last update on Zay Flowers. He did not practice. He has not practiced yet. They still say he has an outside shot to face the Bills. It is also worth noting that he did not practice at all the week leading up to the wild card matchup, as well as the last regular season game. So they have been trying to manage his minutes during practice. So we'll see if he shows up for the Bills game coming up. Speaking of the Bills locked in their 5th consecutive trip to their divisional round as they beat the Broncos 31-7. Start to the game seemed like we were possibly in for a shootout of sorts as Denver scored within the first 3 minutes on the deep bomb from rookie quarterback Bo Nix to wide receiver Troy Franklin. Unfortunately for Denver, those were the last points they'd score. Denver's defense went on lockdown, Buffalo's defense went on lockdown, holding the Broncos to a total of 224 yards on offense with 145 through the air and 79 on the ground.
That was accidental.
I liked it, though. That's a good accident.
Yeah, it could have been worse timing. Buffalo, meanwhile, came within 29 yards of eclipsing 500 yards, finishing with a total of 261 through the air and an impressive 210 rushing yards behind a stellar 120-yard and 1 touchdown performance from James Cook and 40-plus yards from both Josh Allen and Ty Johnson, all against a rush defense that was 3rd in the league during the regular season. Denver's defense season comes to an early but promising end as the Broncos do appear to have found their long-term solution at quarterback. Buffalo, meanwhile, moves to the divisional round and stays in Orchard Park for a huge matchup on Sunday night against the visiting Baltimore Ravens. Mr. Country Road, what were your thoughts on the Bills-Broncos matchup?
Yeah, when the duck combination came out and hit right at the beginning, I thought, oh, we might be in for something here. But Buffalo really kind of turned it on and shut him out really the rest of the way. I've been really impressed with James Cook. Like, Dalvin was always the better one, and James, even at Georgia, he looked small, and he never really did a lot at Georgia. And then, like, really up until this year, I feel like this year he's done something. I don't know what's changed, but he's been unbelievable. Like, he's been probably one of the more fun running backs to watch in the NFL. I think that's a huge addition and a huge help with them losing Stephon Diggs, obviously. It wasn't a very good game. I was really hoping for a better game than what it was. And I think even Sean Payton was a little disappointed in that too with what he said. But I do think the Broncos have a little bit of promise in the future. And when we get to the coaching carousel, it's actually something I want to bring up. So we'll get to a little bit more on that when we get to the carousel.
All right. Carter, what were your thoughts on the Bills-Broncos?
Yeah, I think last week on the pod, I picked Denver to cover. And like Jake said, that Oregon connection right off the bat, I was like, here we go. That's exactly what they needed to do. And then I think Buffalo just flexed their muscles and outclassed them a little bit. Still a pretty awesome season for Denver. I've been so impressed with this last year's rookie draft class. The quarterbacks, it might be the best receiver draft class we've ever seen. Some of the offensive linemen. It's just been, I think, going into it, people were wondering if it was going to be that good of a class. And they had 2 rookies in the playoffs starting games this year. So could have been maybe 3 if McCarthy would have stayed healthy. So, but yeah, Buffalo rolled.
And then look at the rookies on the Rams defensive line, what they just did. Like, it's crazy.
It's awesome class.
Ike, thoughts on the Bills-Broncos game?
Yeah, Workman kind of stole my talking point. I was going to talk about James Cook and what he's meant to that offense. They traded for Amari Cooper halfway through the season, but before they did that, you looked at the Bills and you go, how are they going to score? Like, Shakir's a decent number 2, a field stretcher type guy, but he's not a go-to guy. Kincaid was supposed to take a step up this year, and he really didn't. So, like, what is making the Bills so good besides Josh Allen? And it's been Cook. He's been the one cog that's kept them running this year, and it was a big kind of shock. Like, I avoided him in all my fantasy leagues because, well, he hasn't been impressive. I don't remember. I know Jacob was down on the Bills early on the year, preseason. I was too. I didn't know if this was a playoff team, but they still keep finding a way, and they look pretty freaking good right now.
Yeah, I think, and don't quote me on this, but I think I had the Bills sneaking in as a wild card, and Jake had them just outside of the wild card matchup in our playoff predictions.
That sounds right, because I think we both had a little bit more hope for either the Jets or Dolphins. So
I think it was the Jets we both had higher up, which turned into a shit show really quick. All right, let's keep it moving here. The Eagles beat the Packers 22-10 in their matchup. Rough game from Jordan Love, proved to be too much to overcome for Green Bay. Philly came out hot, getting a fumble recovery on the opening kickoff and scoring their first touchdown of the game less than 2 minutes into the first quarter. Jake Elliott field goal later in that quarter took the Eagles up 10-zip. Packers took a deep shot down the sideline to start the second quarter, and that pass was intercepted by Darius Slay. And with a minute left in the second, Love threw his second interception to linebacker Zach Bond, and the Eagles took the game into halftime up 10-zip. Green Bay got their first points with just under 6 left in the third off a 26-year-old field goal from Brandon McManus, but Philly answered right back with another touchdown. This time, a 24-yard pass from Jalen Hurts to tight end Dallas Goedert. Most of you probably seen that because that play had two pretty nasty stiff arms right in a row. Green Bay did answer quickly with the touchdown to open the fourth, but two more field goals from the Eagles and a third costly interception on a questionable bomb to the end zone on a 1st and 10 play with 2 minutes left in the game from Jordan Love sealed the victory for the number 2 seed in the NFC. Jordan Love finished 20 of 33 for 212 yards and 3 interceptions. Josh Jacobs was the highlight for the Packers. He finished with 81 yards and a score on the ground, along with 3 catches for 40 yards. On the Eagles side, Jalen Hurts returned from concussion protocol, but he had a pretty mild game. He finished 13 to 21 for 131 and 2 scores, also had 36 rushing yards. Saquon Barkley continued being the MVP for the Eagles this season. He finished with 25 carries for 119 on the ground. Green Bay heads home for the season, while the Eagles are staying home and prepare for a Sunday afternoon clash against the surging Los Angeles Rams. Ike, what were your thoughts on the Packers-Eagles game?
I could tell Toyota-thon was over because Love looked terrible again. He was supposed to – I don't know if he regressed this year or if he just didn't take the step up everyone was expecting him to take. But he didn't look like a playoff winning quarterback. I know the Eagles defense is tough. That's a tough environment to go play in, but I don't think the Eagles looked overly impressive. I just think the Packers looked poor. Other than that, I don't really have a whole lot to say about this one.
Yeah, it was it wasn't a really decent game from either side of the fence. Jake, what were your thoughts on the game?
Yeah, I mean, and if the Packers offense could have done anything, I think they could have won the game. The Green Bay defense was unbelievable in that game. Like that score was way closer than it ever should have been because of Green Bay's defense. In the first half, they were unbelievable. Like after they gave up the first score, they really turned it on and they saved them in that game. Really, I mean, Green Bay, and being a Lions fan, I have no feel sorry for them at all about this, but I feel like they had an injury on every play in that game. Like I feel like they just kept losing guys after every single play. It was getting pretty bad. Or was it Dobbs that came back and got another concut? Like he was even wearing the Guardian cap. Like that's not something you really want to see. So I don't know. That injury after injury after injury. They didn't have any receivers left at the end of the game. And yeah, Love. I do agree with what Ike said. Towards down the stretch, Love didn't look that good. He had a moment during the season though where it was like, okay, here we go. The Packers are for real. Like they were, I think 1.5 or 2 games behind Minnesota and us the whole season pretty much. But then there was like a turn. I don't know if it was injuries to receivers or what it was, but it did feel like Love really didn't. I won't say he was awful, but he was average, much more average than he should have been.
Yeah.
I mean, towards the end of last year, he looked like the next big thing. He looked like he was going to take the step and be the guy this year, possibly top 2 or 3 guy, and it just didn't happen for whatever reason.
Carter?
Yeah, I think Green Bay came in there banged up. I think Love was hurt down the stretch, obviously. He came in without Christian Watson, then Dobbs and Reed both go down. So, I mean, how much can you pin that on him because he didn't have anyone to really throw it to? They seemed like they wanted to lean on Jacobs a lot more this year and play good defense and not really count on Love. But I think they need to really open it up next year with him. All those guys are like 24 years old or younger. Like they're going to be really young and good for a while. But the Eagles are just too much good defense and leaning on Saquon.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where Aaron Rodgers had the clash with LaFleur at first, though, because LaFleur is more of a motion, like the Kyle Shanahan run the ball offense. So I think that is going to take a lot out of Love's hands anyway, just because that's the style that he coaches.
Yeah, for what it's worth, I think Josh Jacobs had a pretty solid season. And it was also impressive to see what Green Bay did without Jair Alexander out there because he was obviously out of the game as well. So we'll see what happens. It's not an easy division to play in the NFC North, and it's not going to get any easier over the next couple of years. Next up, the Washington Commanders are advancing to the divisional round as they defeated the Tampa Bay Bucks 23-20 on Sunday. By far the most competitive game of the weekend. Washington and Tampa basically traded blows all the way through until the clock hit 0. This one really came down to efficiency. Baker Mayfield and the Bucks missed several opportunities throughout the game, including a fumble by Baker at the Tampa Bay 15 that resulted in a Commanders touchdown. and then failing to get 1 yard on 2 tries from the Commanders' 12-yard line, settling for a field goal to tie the game instead of a touchdown heading into the Commanders' final drive. And that proved costly as Jaden Daniels ran for a clutch first down that set up Zane Gonzalez for a game-winning 37-yard field goal. The kick bounced off the right upright and went through as time expired, giving the Commanders the win. Commendable performance from the injury-prone Bucs this season as they head home. The Commanders, meanwhile, continue their playoff hopes as they head to the divisional round to face off against the number 1 seed Detroit Lions in Motor City on Saturday night. It is worth noting that the last time the Commanders were in the divisional rounds was 2005, and they got a wild card win against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, convincingly enough. Carter, what were your thoughts on the game?
Full disclosure, I didn't watch the second half of this, so it looks like I missed the best game of the weekend, really. It came down to the wire. Is Dan Quinn getting any love for Coach of the Year? Because what he's done with Jaden Daniels and the rest of this team is super impressive. Baker, what a year from him. It's kind of, I don't know if he can repeat that, 42 touchdowns. But they do get Mike Evans, McMillan, and Godwin back next year, so we'll see if he can. But super impressive by the Commanders with the rookie quarterback getting this W.
They better hope that Liam Cohen stays. That's all. Because I saw a rumor today that the Jags are wanting to interview him, and he might be the favorite for that job.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where Liam Cohen ends up. Jake, what were your thoughts on the game?
Really was about like I expected. I expected Washington to win that game. The strange turnover from the Bucs at the end, McMillan was in motion, and I don't know if Baker was trying to fake it to him or if what the hell he was doing, but he slammed it right into him and caused the ball to hit the ground, and that was the turning point in the game. I mean, I wouldn't say there was a fault to either side. Both teams played pretty well, other than the Bucs turnovers is essentially what cost them in the end. But two teams that are pretty even in my book. Like I think they're almost the same teams in my mind. So I mean, Mike Evans is clearly a little better than McLaurin, I would still say, even at this age, but it's still not a huge difference. These two teams were kind of mirror images in my mind.
Yeah, I do love how Jalen McMillan started turning it on a little bit there towards the end of the season. So that should be fun for Baker if he can have him stepping in as the 3 with Godwin and Evans. Ike, what were your thoughts on the game?
Yeah, I think they did kind of mirror each other, and I think it's because teams tend to follow their quarterbacks, and both those quarterbacks have that swagger. They have that it factor. They have that nothing's going to rattle them, and they're going to go out there and compete. There was one play early on where Daniels was dancing the sidelines and got hit late, and you could hear the crowd, even though it was a away crowd. You hear, the sidelines were going nuts, and Daniels just went up stone-faced. He just looked like it didn't bother him one bit. You could just tell how confident he was, and that was reflected on the whole team.
Yeah, that Baker's definitely kind of found himself in Tampa. I think he's found himself a home. So it'll be interesting to see how Tampa lays out in 2025.
I think they allow him to be himself and to have fun, and it shows, and that goes a long way.
Yeah, he's kind of got that same attitude that Dan Campbell talks about Jared Goff having, where Goff can have a game where he throws 5 picks and it's not going to shake him. He doesn't care. He just shakes it off and goes back to the next play. And I think Baker's got that same kind of moxie to him. So
yeah, I will say Goff doesn't quite have Baker's a little different. I mean, Baker planted the flag at Oklahoma in Ohio State's field. I mean, Baker.
Well, yeah, but I mean, there's a difference between that level of swagger.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it's definitely a next level up, but it's that same kind of mentality of shaking it off and just moving on to the next play.
Goff has that, like, just that stone cold killer, like, whatever, I'm back.
Right. All right, let's cover the last game here. We did have a Monday night matchup. The Los Angeles Rams overcame a tough week with a dominant performance as they defeated the Minnesota Vikings 27-9 in their wild card matchup held at State Farm Stadium on Monday night. LA's young but very talented defense was on point all night, holding a Vikings offense that had been pretty efficient all season to just 3.8 yards per play, compiling 9 sacks, forcing a fumble, stopping a key 2-point conversion, and blanking the Vikings in the fourth quarter to secure their wild card victory. The nail in the proverbial coffin seemingly came in the second quarter. It started with the Sam Darnold pass that was intended for Jordan Addison, but intercepted by Kobe Durant. The subsequent Rams drive quickly stalled, but 4.5 minutes left in the second quarter. A sack fumble from Michaela Witherspoon on Darnold was scooped up by rookie defensive end and Jacob Workman favorite Jared Verse and returned 57 yards for a touchdown. Stalled Vikings drive on the next series gave the ball back to LA, who went 39 yards in just over a minute to score yet again, taking the score to 24-3 LA at the end of the half. Minnesota managed to find the end zone once in the middle of the third quarter, but it would be all she wrote as LA claimed the victory over the 14-win Vikings. For Minnesota, Sam Darnold finished 25 of 40 for 245 yards, 1 touchdown and a pick. Aaron Jones was held to just 48 yards on 13 carries, and Justin Jefferson also wasn't much of a factor. He finished with 5 catches on 8 targets for 58 yards. LA's ageless wonder, Matthew Stafford, finished 19 of 27 for 209 and 2 scores. Kyron Williams led the offensive attack with 16 carries for 76 yards on the ground and 3 catches for 16 yards and a touchdown through the air. Minnesota undoubtedly returns home disappointed after a tremendous regular season, while the Rams fly east to battle the number 2 seed Philadelphia Eagles on Sunday afternoon. And just a quick note, obviously hoping for the best for those in Southern California who are continuing to battle the wildfires. Ike, what were your thoughts on the Rams-Vikings game?
I think 13 for 48 in a playoff game with Aaron Jones is kind of – I know they got behind early, but I think that's kind of unacceptable. Like, Minnesota has a good defense, and they should have a good run game and let Darnold complement that, not let Darnold take over or try to take over, because he's capable of doing it, but he's not likely to do it, as we've seen the past couple of weeks. I think he's cost himself a lot of money. I think that the game plan was kind of poor for Minnesota, but the Rams looked like a good complete team. They're one of those teams, they can beat you on the ground, they can beat you through the air. They're getting healthy at the right time. They're dangerous.
Carter, what were your thoughts on the game?
Yeah, it went about how I thought. I figured that defensive line was going to pressure Darnold into some mistakes. That Jared Verse scoop and score, that Superman dive, it looked like he was shot out of a cannon. That was super impressive. I would have liked to see what would have happened if that Stafford the scoop and score for the Vikings that got overturned for the, I don't know, that little flick of the wrist that Stafford did. That would have made the game 10-10. It would have got interesting then. But yeah, like Ike said, I think they got behind and then got away from Aaron Jones and just could never establish the run at that point. But yeah, Rams, pretty impressive win.
Yeah, that was such a heads up play. I sent a message to Workman when that happened, and I was like, Matt, dude, it's just Stafford being Stafford. Jake, what were your thoughts on the matchup?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Vikings got exposed. I mean, the Lions and the Rams are the 2 teams that beat them this year. They beat them, both teams beat them twice. So, I mean, I personally, anytime a coach of McVay's tree is going up against McVay, I always take McVay in that anyway. But I think what the Lions did to the Vikings, I thought, okay, the Vikings would realize that and just expect the Rams to do the same thing. And it seems like they didn't prepare that way. It seems like they thought maybe they would try something different. And the Rams had 9 sacks, completely abused them. And I've watched Stafford enough to know the first drive of the game, I was like, okay, he's on one today. Like, you can tell with him very quickly how he's going to perform. And I mean, when he comes out just slinging lasers, I mean, he's a different player. You can tell, I don't know. I've watched him so much that I can get a very good feel on him quickly. And I could tell he was in for a good game. Cooper Kupp really didn't do anything. I think he had 1 catch in the game. He didn't even have to do anything. Puka is obviously Puka. He's killed it. Higbee had one hell of a catch. Stafford threw one right over. I think it was a linebacker running down the sideline with him, and Higbee had a diving catch. I think that was the first drive of the game also. They just came out with a mentality, and I was really surprised with the situation. I mean, they're all displaced. All their families moved basically to Arizona for the week. I'm really interested to see how this week goes because one had to play on Monday, which is just insane. That should not be a thing when they have to play the next weekend. Then they had to go back to L.A. They're leaving Saturday to go to Philly. The game is supposed to be in snow Sunday. So, it's a tough situation. Really tough situation, I feel like.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what the weather forecast looks like, especially with that LA game. So we'll keep an eye out on that. Let's move on to head coaching updates here. I just did a quick search, and I haven't seen anything new coming out from the last couple hours here. The first big hammer to drop was in Foxborough. We talked about this a little bit last week. The Patriots have found their next head coach. Robert Kraft turned to another former Patriots linebacker to lead the team, this time hiring Mike Vrabel to be the 16th head coach in franchise history. Jake, what were your thoughts on the Vrabel hire?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it last week because we all thought it was obvious. Like it was just inevitable at that time. And I still don't really feel like Mayo got a true run, but it is what it is. Vrabel's been a coach before. We know what he brings. I'm interested to see what he brings in. I have seen rumors of Josh McDaniels coming in to be the offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
Be interesting to see what happens there because I do feel Drake May needs someone with him to continue his success. But overall, I think it's a good hire. I wouldn't pick anyone else for that team.
Yeah, I just don't. I guess my question is, why did he wait a season? I don't understand why they didn't try to get this done.
Well, they couldn't. Belichick
Mayo was under contract.
Yeah, he was already named coach and waiting in contract, so they had to.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Well, that makes sense. Carter, I saw you throwing a thumbs down there.
That was to Josh McDaniels.
Oh, okay.
I think that'd be a terrible hire for him. With the Patriots, I think it's interesting. They haven't actually, to me, had a real coaching search in 20-some years before Belichick. Because Mayo was under contract, he had to get it, and then obviously Vrabel was pegged right away. They threw a couple interviews to Pep Hamilton and Byron Leftwich, wonder why, and then Vrabel got the job. So I'll be interested to see who they get at OC because that's going to be an important hire
for sure. Ike, any thoughts on the hire?
No, I mean Vrabel's the perfect hire. He's probably one of the better names out there for any job, but the Patriots job in particular, I mean, it's match made in heaven.
Yeah, agreed. The other big hammer to drop over the past week was actually in Arlington. I tried to get in Texas on the show tonight, but he wasn't available. After blocking the Bears from an interview several days ago, Jerry Jones announced that the Dallas Cowboys and head coach Mike McCarthy have mutually agreed to part ways. McCarthy finished with 5 seasons in Dallas, going 49-34. Securing 3 straight 12-5 seasons, but finding no success in the playoffs. Pretty prototypical of the Cowboys organization. The front office drug their feet, making a decision turned out to be detrimental to the team, as many candidates in the coaching carousel are now into their preparation for the divisional round matchups and are unlikely to be contacted until they're either eliminated from competition or the season concludes. Rumor mill's been swirling pretty heavily on who the Cowboys plan to target. Very unlikely, but we have seen some rumors about the possibility of Belichick. Jason Witten has been a name that has been increasingly getting loud. Steve Sarkisian and Lincoln Riley, but probably the most loud name that has happened has been Deion Sanders. Former Jets head coach Robert Saleh is also expected to interview for the role. Just get it out of the way, Jake.
Just start. I know. I want to hear you. I want your opinion on this.
Oh God. I'm frustrated for a number of reasons, just like what happened with CD and what happened with Dak. Jerry in the front office drags their feet until it puts us in a predicament. I'm not at all interested in the circus that Deion's likely to bring to Dallas. Jerry's been going on and on the past couple days about how Jason Witten is comparable to head coach in Detroit that was a former Dallas Cowboys tight end. We're gonna fuck it up. That's all I know. That's all I can say is we're gonna find a way to fuck it up. I don't know who it's gonna be, but
I want to give my opinion on that because I saw that too, and we saw Jason Witten in a Monday Night Football booth. Like we've heard him talk. This guy is not like Dan Campbell is one of one. Like that guy, there is no matching in like being the same as Dan Campbell. This guy's talking about fucking just listen to all the nonsense Dan Campbell said in his career. His very first press conference was about biting kneecaps off. Like Jason Witten is not Dan Campbell in any way. Yes, they played tight end and they're white. Like that's the similarity. I don't get it. Like they're not the same person.
Well, okay, think about who the similarity is being. It's coming out of Jerry Jones's mouth. So
well, yeah, I know that's true.
It's to be expected.
I just want to know what your thoughts would be if Deion Sanders was named the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys.
It's going to be a shit show, dude. Like
he can't coach NFL players.
He's not, and he doesn't. He said before he doesn't want to coach NFL players. Like we weren't confident he was going to be able to do college. He did have a better second season in Colorado than he did in his first year, but they also had a lot of talent. We'll see what happens when he loses Shador and Travis Hunter and a lot of these other guys because Colorado, I mean, I guess it really doesn't matter if he's going to end up leaving, but I don't see Dion being able to influence NFL players like he can college kids because he brings in a certain swagger for being prime time. And I think that has an impact on kids. It's not going to have an impact on grown ass men that are in a locker room trying to win a Super Bowl. But until Jerry Jones is gone and we find a GM, like none of this is going to matter. It's not going to matter what coach ends up in this position. Like I certainly don't want to be put into another position where we have our head coach calling plays. I would like to have a actual solid offensive coordinator. I think that's been a problem for our franchise for the past few years.
Go ahead. I have something to throw in though at the end.
Yeah, I mean, I just like I'm not confident at all in how this is going to turn out because it's the Cowboys. Go ahead.
So there's a name that I've heard a lot of, and I don't think you mentioned it unless I missed it. But speaking of offensive coordinator, I've heard Kellen Moore as the new head coach of the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, see, I've heard that too. Again, like I was not impressed. Kellen has grown, I think, as an offensive coordinator since he left Dallas. But I don't think we need somebody that's got more of a Mike Tomlin type attitude to bring some discipline into the locker room. And I don't think Kellen Moore's going to bring it. I don't think Lincoln Riley's going to bring it. I don't think Jason Witten's going to bring it. And I don't like the fact that Jerry seems to be isolating former players or people that have ties to the organization. And that should carry almost no weight, in my opinion. I would rather see like an Aaron Glenn step in. Obviously, I want Ben Johnson, but I don't think that's ever going to happen. It seems that the rumors seem to be that Ben Johnson's headed to the Raiders based on what Tom Brady's been doing, but I don't know, man.
That's what I wanted to throw in when I mentioned it earlier. But there is one more thing I want to ask you about this. So if you are hiring the Cowboys head coaching job, who is your pick?
If I could pick anybody, it'd be Ben Johnson.
Okay, if you could pick someone that you could actually interview and hire right now. And they fucked that up. That's on Jerry because if they would have got rid of, if they would have let him be gone, they could have already had that interview with Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson.
Correct. So I don't know. Like I'm not overly happy with anybody that's out there right now. I mean, the only way that I would possibly be a little bit okay with it is they found some way to pull Belichick from UNC, and that's not going to happen. So
let me ask you this, because this is the only name we really haven't brought up that I think might be a real possibility. He is old, but what about Pete Carroll?
I mean, I like the Seattle Seahawks. I do love Pete Carroll. I mean, with all of the guys that are out there right now, maybe, but I don't know that Pete's the right answer. I don't think Pete's going to want to put up with Jerry's bullshit. And that's part of the other problem is that I don't think we're going to get the type of coach that we could get with the organization because Dallas has talent on the team, but the problem is Jerry, and there's going to be a lot of coaches that aren't going to want that position because they're not going to want to deal with the Jones family because there's so many caveats that come into being a head coach with this franchise. So
I almost feel like Dallas and the Bears are in the same spot. As weird as it seems, like,
yeah, but I mean,
there's a lot of parallels to those two teams, other than one has a much, much younger quarterback.
Well, yeah, and the Bears also have a lot more money to spend.
Well, yeah, true.
I mean, if I'm picking between the Bears and the Cowboys, as a Cowboys fan, I think the Bears, I mean, the only concern about the Bears job is just because the NFC North is such a tight division, and I think you have an opportunity to win the NFC East at any given year because there's so much parity. Yeah. I mean,
it changes every year.
All over the place. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, if Pete Carroll were the guy, I would be happy with it considering what's out there and what I know is realistic to get. But I don't think, I mean, if I'm Pete Carroll, one interview with Jerry Jones, I'm probably be like, I don't want this fucking job. I'd rather go coach Caleb Williams.
Yeah. So before we move on to what I was going to say, I want to hear Ike and Carter. What if you guys could hire the Cowboys head coach? What would it be? Oh, so Ike.
Belichick's the only name that's even been thrown out that I think would have a reasonable chance of success because I think he's the only name that Jones respects enough to maybe go hands off and let him do his thing. I don't think any other coach is going to be able to go in there and establish what needs to be established and take over besides Belichick. And
I don't think Jerry
get Belichick, so I think they're screwed.
Yeah, I don't think Jerry
is alive.
Jerry can't put his ego aside. I don't care if it's Bill Belichick or Bill Parcells or Jimmy John. Like, it doesn't matter. I don't think that Jerry's going to be able to put his ego aside.
Well, and I watch a lot of interviews. Belichick and Michael Lombardi seem to be really into this North Carolina thing. I don't think there's any shot in hell they're leaving there. Like,
no, I don't think so either.
Year. So I don't think that's even realistic.
Yeah.
So I don't think there is a good answer. Sorry, Reese.
Carter, do you have anyone? Jeff
Oh,
Saturday?
I got a good answer. Neon Dion. I want the full fucking clown
Jesus
show. I want the whole circus. No, realistic name you guys, we mentioned a little bit ago, but you haven't mentioned for Dallas is Liam Cohen for Tampa Bay, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't see any way Belichick leaves North Carolina. I don't see Jerry Jones taking a back seat to anyone. This is Jerry's world. He waited, so now everyone can be talking about Dallas through the playoffs, and he screwed this whole thing up.
And I know it's not finalized, but it seems like Aaron Glenn is going to be the next head coach of the New York Jets.
Which makes sense because he's got ties to that franchise. So that's why I'm like, I don't think Aaron Glenn would have been realistic anyway. But, I mean, yeah, dude. It's more of the same bullshit.
But just to throw in the thing that I said I wanted to get back to. So it does seem like Ben Johnson, if he leaves, is going to be the coach of the Raiders. And what you brought up earlier was in the division. Like, to me, it's almost insane. Like, I feel like he's setting himself up for failure in a division where the Chargers have become much better. The Chiefs are the Chiefs. That's not changing in the next couple of years. And the Broncos, I mean, we just saw what the Broncos have done. Like, yeah. And he's going to go to a team that essentially doesn't have a quarterback. It's basically him and Tom Brady are going to build a team together, which if there's two guys I'd put my faith in, yeah, it's those two. I mean, I get that. But in that division, that just is my biggest question. Like, it's like, why? Like, I get wanting to be a head coach, but like, how do you leave what you have right now? Especially if we don't win the Super Bowl. If we don't win the Super Bowl, there's unfinished business for Ben Johnson to come back. So I'm really hoping that maybe we see, if we don't win the Super Bowl, we see kind of like the Josh McDaniels to the Colts thing, where it's like, hey, I'm going there, and then all of a sudden it's like, no, I'm going to stay. So maybe we'll get lucky with that, but it does seem like Ben is going to be with the Raiders, which does piss me off because Tom Brady is going to be in our building this weekend. I think that should be highly illegal. I think he should be kicked out of being a broadcaster if he's going to be more of a GM and owner role that he's becoming. I don't think this should be allowed.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. All right, let me leave my misery here. Let's talk about a couple other teams. We just talked about the Chicago Bears a little bit. They're continuing their head coaching search. They've interviewed several candidates already, including former Panther and Commanders head coach Ron Rivera and the guy we just talked about, Coach Pete. Team still has a number of interviews planned, including Iowa State head coach Matt Campbell and former Cowboys head coach Mike McCarthy. Jacksonville Jaguars have completed interviews with Steve Spagnuolo, Ben Johnson, Aaron Glenn, and Patrick Graham so far. They have several other interviews left, including Bucks OC Liam Cohen and former Jets head coach Robert Saleh. We talked about the Raiders. They've been a little slow in the interview process thus far, only interviewing Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson. Todd Monken, Aaron Glenn, Spags, Pete Carroll, and Robert Saleh are also reportedly on their short list. Saints have completed interviews with Giants OC Mike Kafka and Lions DC Aaron Glenn. They still have several more to come. They are reportedly interested in the possibility of retaining interim head coach Darren Rizzi. And finally, the New York Jets have seemingly interviewed everyone who has ever touched or looked at a football. They've completed at least 9 interviews, including former head coach Rex Ryan. They still have several more plans, but to Jake's point, it does sound like there's a distinct possibility that we might end up seeing Aaron Glenn as the head coach of the Jets starting next season.
I want to throw in something real quick because I don't think we really brought him up much when we were talking about the Cowboys, but that's my pick, actually. I would take Robert Saleh as the head coach of the Cowboys. I think that's the best available option for their situation, to be honest.
I was thinking the same thing. They should just swap head coaches because I think McCarthy away from Dallas is going to do good things again.
I think he's going to be the Bears head coach. I think he'll be the Bears coach. But yeah, Saleh is, to me, Saleh with a good OC. Like I think that's the Cowboys. That should be what their objective is.
Yeah, Texas and I actually talked about it a little bit earlier today. Like, we were both hoping that there was a potential for, if he doesn't get a head coaching position, for him to be the DC. I mean, there's definitely worse hires there. I'd rather have Saleh as the head coach than Jason Witten. I mean, I love Jason Witten. He's one of my favorite all-time players, but I don't want him as the head coach of the Cowboys. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully we've got some updates as we land into next week, but it is time to pick some games, guys. So let's kick things off here. Our first matchup for the divisional round weekend features CJ Stroud and the number 4 Houston Texans as they travel to the Heartland to take on the back-to-back defending champion and number 1 seed Kansas City Chiefs. 4:30 p.m. kickoff on Saturday at Arrowhead Stadium on ESPN on ABC. KC won the Week 16 battle 27-19 back in December, despite Patrick Mahomes dealing with a sprained ankle. The game was close throughout, despite 2 early interceptions from CJ Stroud. The biggest loss for the season for the Texans was that of Tank Dell, who suffered a gruesome knee injury and was lost for the year. Can the Texans return to Kansas City and get some revenge? Over-under is 41.5. KC is favored by 8.5. I'm going to save Ike for last on this one. Let's go to Carter.
So I think this game should be pretty good. I like Houston's defense. I think they can challenge Kansas City a little bit, at least in the first half. I'm eyeing the first half Texans +6. But offensively, I think they're limited with only having Nico Collins and Mixon. I mean, their path to victory is get Mixon rolling. It's always the best way to beat the Chiefs is to take a time of possession and run the ball. But I'm not going to bet against Mahomes this early. So give me the Chiefs -8.5.
Jake.
Yeah, this over-under surprisingly is really low to me. I'm not sure I understand that. I feel like the Chiefs alone are probably hitting 28. So I don't know. That seems very low to me. I'm going to be on the Chiefs here. They've had the break. They've had a little bit longer. Reed's always good with the extra break. Houston, I'm still not sure what we saw last week is what they're going to be, especially on the road at Arrowhead. So I'm going to be on the Chiefs in this one.
Ike.
Yeah, I mean, I should have a whole lot to say about this game, but I really don't. Like, I don't know what Houston brings to the table to be able to compete in this matchup. Chiefs' run defense is phenomenal. McDuffie is, in my opinion, the best corner in football. He's got PFF's lockdown rate, number 1 corner. He can shut down Nico, and Jalen Watson's supposed to be back this week, and he's a phenomenal number 2. The way to beat the Chiefs is your number 2 and 3 guy and your tight end, and I don't think Houston has that. So they're going to have to play like they played last weekend to even keep it close. And even if they play like they played last weekend, I just don't see them winning the game.
All right, so you are taking the Chiefs -8.5.
Very comfortably with the 8.5.
All right. Yeah, Houston's performance last week was impressive, especially considering LA's stout defense. Stroud was being limited, like we talked about, to Nico and Joe Mixon is really his only weapons. I'm with you guys, though. I do think the well runs dry here. KC's just going to be too much to overcome. I did play around with the possibility of taking the 8.5 because the Chiefs just notoriously haven't been covering. But Ike convinced me before the show that it is a different situation when these guys are in the playoffs. So I'm going to be with you guys. I am going to take KC minus the 8.5. Scott, who could not be with us today, is also taking the Chiefs. Our second matchup on Saturday has rookie quarterback Jaden Daniels and the number 6 Washington Commanders heading to Motor City to take on Jared Goff and the number 1 seed Detroit Lions. 8 p.m. kickoff at Ford Field on Fox. These two teams haven't met since week 2 of the 2022 season when Carson Wentz was still the starting quarterback for the Commanders under then head coach Ron Rivera. Much different look for this Washington team as they look to keep their Cinderella story going on the back of rookie quarterback Jaden Daniels. The path to the NFC Championship runs through Detroit this year. Can the Commanders overcome what will undoubtedly be a raucous crowd at Ford Field? Over under 55.5. Detroit is favored by 9.5, the biggest spread of the week. Carter.
I want the over-under that's on the graphic here. I will.
I was confused by that
over
too. That was my question.
44.5.
44.5.
Yeah, I was confused by that also.
Yeah, it should be 55.
Okay.
Yeah, if you got a book for that, let me know. I think Lions are obviously probably my favorite team in the NFC this year. I love what Campbell's doing with them. I love the way they're playing. But their defense, if they get in any trouble, is against the pass. And so I think Daniels is going to have some success here. They're going to score some points. But that's a lot of points. 9.5 is a lot. Lions are probably going to roll. Give me the Lions -9.5.
Ike.
Yeah, this one's interesting to me. I think running quarterbacks have given the Lions a little bit of problems this year, and this is the best one they faced. I think Washington's going to have to run the ball, both with their quarterback and Robinson is going to have a big game. And they're going to have another one of those. I think they had like a 19-play, 9-minute drive last week. I think it's going to take a couple of those to keep it close, but I don't know if they're going to be capable of doing it. I see a path to Washington covering, but I still think I'm going to take Detroit 9.5. One thing to maybe give a little bit of pause is we just mentioned both offensive and defensive coordinators' names and all kinds of head coaching searches. And I know they went through it some last year, but how big of I don't want to say distraction, but how much time are they spending? Are they losing to prepare by interviewing for other positions? I don't think it's a huge deal, but it's just something to maybe consider.
Jake.
Yeah, that's something I've been wondering about too. And I really haven't seen anything about Cliff Kingsbury doing too many interviews. That was one of the things I was wondering too with the Washington OC. But yeah, 9.5 seems like a lot to me in this game. To me, it actually almost has an identical feel to that Bucs game last year at home. Like that's kind of my feeling going into the game, the playoff game last year. And we had a late pick to seal it, but I think it was a 6-point game. Daniels does scare me a little bit because of his ability to run. But with Anzalone being back, I feel like we're in a little bit better shape with him back to contain that. You're going to get a Terry and Arnold pass interference. That's a given at some point. The refs love to call him for everything. 9.5 is a lot, but I just feel like I'm not really worried as much about this one as I am for next week. So I think the 9.5, the Lions will cover this.
I got a question for you, Workman. Do you think Montgomery being back is a good thing or a bad thing?
I don't think it's either. I think we were just as fine without him, and I mean it's good for Gibbs, but Gibbs has been on fire.
Well,
so
I think regular season, the whole Sonic Knuckles, keeping people healthy and fresh thing is good, but I think Gibbs is the better player.
Yeah,
and the more touches he gets, the better off they are.
Well,
I'm hoping loyalty to Montgomery, who may not be healthy, may be a hindrance to their success.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like he is fully healthy and fully ready to go from what I've been reading. And I do think that it will be more of the first quarter. I think we'll see Gibbs the first 2 drives. We'll get a pure Montgomery drive for the third, and then it'll probably be Gibbs the rest of the game. That's kind of been our MO towards the end of the season. But we'll see. Montgomery is Montgomery, but I mean, Gibbs, my God, he's turned it on. Like he's done more than I ever could have dreamed he was going to do.
Yeah,
and
Montgomery's a perfect fit for the Lions offense, and he's a heck of a player. I love the guy. Like I liked him in Chicago, and he's just been perfect in Detroit. But I feel like anytime you take a touch away from Gibbs, it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, he gained a super fan in my wife Kayla after the Thanksgiving thing because they were all standing there eating turkey legs and he was just gnawing on that carrot. she loved that. Yeah, the Lions are still dealing obviously with a lot of injuries, especially on the defense side of the ball. But DC's been a motivator all season. This team keeps finding ways to overcome adversity. Significant spread here, but I think home crowd late field goal by Bates is going to seal a 10-point win for the Lions. So I'm with you guys. I'm going to take Detroit to cover. Scott is also going to take Detroit. First of our 2 Sunday matchups features Matthew Stafford and the number 4 Los Angeles Rams as they fly coast to coast to battle Jalen Hurts and the number 2 Philadelphia Eagles. 3 p.m. kickoff at Lincoln Financial Field on NBC and Peacock. These 2 teams met in Week 12 in LA, and the Eagles dominated 37-20 on the back of massive games from Saquon Barkley, who finished with 255 and 2 touchdowns, and A.J. Brown, who caught 8 passes for 109 yards in the score. Another stat worth eyeing were third down conversions. The Eagles went 9 of 15, while the Rams were held to a goose egg. They went 0 for 8 on third down conversions in that game. LA is the third youngest team in the league. Seems to have improved week over week, so we'll see who comes out on top this time around. Can Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford's leadership overcome the veteran experience of the Philadelphia Eagles? Over-under is 44.5. Philly is favored by 6.5. Let's go to Ike.
Yeah, I think this one's tough because I think Philly's one of those kind of, I don't want to say underappreciated teams, but they're so complete and they can beat you so many ways. I have a hard time ever picking against them. But the Rams can beat you in a number of ways too. I mean, Kyron Williams is running the ball well. Like I said, Puka Kupp hasn't been the same since his injury this year. That may be the deciding factor. And then Hurts's rushing ability, I think, separates them a little bit from Stafford. I'm not as confident as I was at the beginning when we were talking before we went on air about Philly, but I'm still going to take Philly in the points.
Carter.
Yeah, I think I'm going to take the Rams getting 6.5 here. I think it's going to be come down to a field goal late. As long as everything that's going on in LA isn't too much, traveling all the way to the East Coast, the wildfires, getting displaced from the homes and everything, that's a lot to handle. But I think if anyone can do it, is a team led by Stafford and McVay. On the other side, Philadelphia is one of the more complete teams in the league on both sides. They got a great defense. Hurts has been playing well. And then earlier in the year when they played, Saquon just torched the Rams. But that D-line isn't the same as they are now. That was early in the year for the Rams. So I'm going to trust McVay to keep this one close. So give me the Rams plus 6.5.
Jake.
Yeah, that game. You might as well throw that game out. That Rams team was so banged up in that game. They weren't the same team at all. The Rams, I mean, like we talked about, there was a point in this season we were talking about maybe trading Stafford to give him one last run at a Super Bowl and doing a fire sale with Cooper Kupp and getting rid of everyone because the whole team was just hurt. Like it was like this team is done. And then they got healthy and they became the Rams again, and they've been absolutely on fire. My concern for this game is the weather. Like I said earlier, it is supposed to start snowing at 2:30, with the game being at 3. I think we're going to get a very cold, snowy game here. Stafford outside in the snow has never been that productive, although he did have one of the most memorable games of his career as a Lions quarterback in Philly in an absolute blizzard. There was like 80 feet of snow on the ground, and that's the game where Calvin had the whole helmet covered in ice, if you guys remember that photo. But I think Philly wins this game. But like Carter said, I think this is a very, very close game, and I'm going to take the Rams to cover Philly win.
Yeah, I've gone back and forth on this one. Slowing down Hurts and Barkley is definitely different than slowing down Darnold and Jones, but I wasn't overly impressed by Philly against the Packers last week. Game script supported them not needing to be overly aggressive, but Green Bay was dealing with their own set of injuries, and if not for some key mistakes by Jordan Love, that game may have had a different outcome. Green Bay's defense was playing legit. Stafford comes in my opinion, with a better arsenal on offense, and then they've got a defense that's very young and hungry for big plays. I'm not just taking the points here. I think the Rams are going to step into Philly and get an upset. I'm taking the Rams plus the points to get the outright win. And
setting me up again. Setting me up for another nightmare.
Setting you up for another nightmare as they will travel to Detroit.
The only positive to this nightmare is that means someone's going to the Super Bowl.
This is true. And for what it's worth, Scott's pick was whoever is playing Philly, so he is also taking the Rams.
Interesting.
All right, the last of our divisional round matchups is a big one. Is Lamar Jackson and the number 3 Baltimore Ravens fly north to Orchard Park to take on Josh Allen and the number 2 Buffalo Bills. 6:30 p.m. at Highmark Stadium on CBS and Paramount Plus. The Ravens owned the Bills in their Week 4 matchup 35-10, but that game was in Baltimore, and the Bills' defense was dealing with a lot of injuries. This time around, the Bills will be healthier and on their own field. Who wins the MVP Battle Bowl between Lamar and Josh Allen? Over under 51.5. Baltimore comes in as the only favored road team, -1.5. Carter, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think both of these teams are a little bit different. First matchup. That first matchup, Ravens ran wild. I think they ran for about 250 against Buffalo. And I think that Baltimore is going to run wild in this one too. I don't know if Buffalo is going to have an answer for that. But will Josh Allen have an answer and be able to keep up scoring wise? I don't know. I love Kyle Hamilton on the backside of that Baltimore defense. So give me Baltimore going on the road and then going to Kansas City to play the Chiefs for the AFC Championship.
Ike.
Yeah, I think coming into the season, I had a clear top 5 group, and it's the 3 that I've chosen to win in these 2. So I feel like this is definitely the toughest matchup of the round. And maybe the toughest matchup in the playoffs to choose. I was looking for a reason to play Buffalo because I don't want any part of Baltimore. I think our lucks may run out on. They should have beaten us last year. They abandoned their game plan. I don't know what they were thinking. They kind of gifted that game to us. We beat them first game of the season by literally a shoelace in the end zone. So, I mean, I don't want to test that again. I've been looking for a reason to pick Buffalo. They're undefeated at home, and like I said, Zay Flowers hasn't been practicing. So if he does play, who knows how he'll be. I guess I don't want to doubt Buffalo anymore. I'm going to choose Bills and in the point.
Jake?
Yeah, I definitely like the Ravens team better. I just think that it's Buffalo's time. I'm going to give the Bills the win here for no reason other than they're the home team. And I just think I talk a lot about how the NFL corrects itself, and I feel like this is an NFL correcting itself game. I think we're going to get the Bills and the Chiefs. I think we're going to get the Lions and the Eagles. Both are going to be 1-2 and set up for one hell of a Final Four. I do still say that Lamar Jackson should be the league MVP, though.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I do think that Lamar Jackson should be the MVP. Ravens came into the playoffs with the best rush defense in the league. They proved it last week against Pittsburgh. They held the Steelers to 29 total rushing yards. Pittsburgh was just outside the top 10 in rushing offense during the regular season. 2 spots ahead of them at 9 was the Buffalo Bills. On the flip side, Baltimore's had the strongest rushing offense in the league. Buffalo was middle of the pack. One thing Baltimore cannot do, I think, in this game is let it get close late, because Justin Tucker has struggled severely all season, especially outside of 40 yards. But I don't think it's going to come down to that. I think this Ravens rush team, with or without Zay Flowers on the field, is just going to be too much for this this Buffalo defense to overcome. So I do have the Ravens covering, winning, and heading into the AFC title game for a rematch with the Kansas City Chiefs. Scott has also picked Baltimore. So that does it for the NFL side of the equation. I am going to pass it over to Jake to cover our one and unfortunately final college football game of the year.
It's a sad time. It's a sad time. It's coming to an end. Monday night, January 20th at 7:30 Eastern on ESPN. We have the College Football Playoff National Championship presented by AT&T. Number 8, Ohio State is an 8.5-point favorite versus number 7, Notre Dame. The over-under is 46.5 at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, Georgia. We will just kick it straight off. Carter, give it to us.
What a matchup. I think this whole season has been amazing. Probably the best college football season I've witnessed. 2012 was pretty awesome. But I knew going against Alabama, we were completely outmatched. In this matchup, I think we're the 2 best teams. I didn't think that after the Northern Illinois game. It's crazy that we're here. But this team has just found a way each week to, if there's someone hurt, doesn't matter. They just keep getting up and finding a way to win. I think offensively, we got to get established the run. We got a couple of offensive linemen there trying to figure out how that's going to work. But it looks like we might get our left tackle that's supposed to start the beginning of the year back, Jagasaw. So we got to establish the run, get Riley Leonard going with his legs, and then he's going to have to make some big passes like he did in the second half against Penn State last week. Defensively, comes down to stopping Travion Henderson and Judkins first and foremost for me. I know everyone's saying Jeremiah Smith, but I think our secondary has always proven itself. We shut down Marvin Harrison the last 2 years. Now maybe Jeremiah Smith's a better player than him. But I think if we stop the run first, and then we got to somehow find some way to pressure Will Howard, maybe force him into some turnovers, and just kind of control the game that way. Turnovers are going to be the key. At the end of the day, though, I think culture is going to win this. I like Notre Dame's culture more than Ryan Day and Ohio State's. So I've got Notre Dame winning outright, 24-21. Go Irish.
Yeah, and I even said that last week in the Texas preview with Ohio State. I was like, Texas's secondary is pretty damn good, and they shut down Ohio State's passing game essentially. Like, they didn't do anything. I think Notre Dame is just as good. I think it's going to be a similar thing with that situation. Before we get to Ike, I'm going to read. So Dr. Beavis has been on the show. He obviously is another huge Notre Dame fan. He sent me. Let me start reading War and Peace here that he sent me. So since the Northern Illinois game, Notre Dame has been in survival mode. They've been taking body blows, losing 2 All-Americans on defense. 6 of 22 projected starters from fall camp are lost. Yet they just keep finding a way to step up and excel. Ohio State is the most talented team in the country, but I have watched plenty of talented teams lose games because the other team wants it more. Physicality will be the ruler of this game. It is pretty simple. If Notre Dame doesn't turn the ball over, they win. I have been saying since September that I think Riley Leonard has one perfect game in him where it all just clicks for 60 minutes. Well, this is it. There isn't tomorrow. On December 18th, Beavis had a dream. Martin Luther King is Monday. Beavis had a dream that Notre Dame and Ohio State would square off for the national title and that Xavier Watts would knock down the final pass to preserve the victory and bring home the title. And sometimes dreams are reality. Notre Dame 31, Ohio State 27, says Dr. Beavis. Ike, what's your pick?
Let's go.
Why did you make me follow that? I don't have a whole lot of interesting things to say. I think it may take a perfect game from Leonard for Notre Dame to pull it off. They have a potent rushing attack. Ohio State's 3rd in the country in rush defense. They've shut down about everybody. The only team that scored more than 20 points against them all year is Oregon both times. I think they're probably going to have to score some points to win. I think it comes down to Howard versus Leonard, who's going to make the more plays. And I think, Notre Dame's secondary is better, but I think Ohio State has more playmakers. I think I'm begrudgingly going to take Ohio State to win the game, but I will take Notre Dame to cover. I think it's going to be a close, very fun ball game.
Reese.
To nobody's surprise, the other leprechaun picked Notre Dame, just to get that out of there. Scott is picking his Irish. I think this game's going to come down to a couple key factors here. One, how well can Notre Dame move the ball against this defense? Buckeyes have held Tennessee, Oregon, and Texas, all top 30 offensive teams, to 21 points or less in the playoff. They shut down Tennessee's passing attack in round 1. They held Oregon to minus 28 rushing yards in round 2. Pretty much controlled Texas's attack virtually all game. Notre Dame's going to have to do better than 2.8 yards per carry that they averaged against Penn State and the 3.4 yards they averaged against Georgia if you eliminate that 32-yard scramble from Riley Leonard. I know Notre Dame won both of those games, but Ohio State's offense is more potent than either Penn State or Georgia, so that's one thing to keep in mind. Second's going to be what Chip Kelly rolls out. If not for the big Henderson touchdown before halftime and Jack Sawyer's fumble return, the Buckeyes offense left a lot to be desired in the Texas game. As we just talked about, Jeremiah Smith was a non-factor, and I don't think that can happen here if Ohio State's going to win. How well Al Golden mixes and matches coverage, I think, is also going to be a big deal against Howard and the Buckeyes. They've got a trio of really fast receivers. Running press man against an offense like this could be challenging. We've seen teams like USC, Georgia Tech, and Louisville all have some success through the air against the Irish. And lastly, I think this may come down to how Notre Dame responds to adversity, because Ohio State has started off hot in every game they've been playing. And Notre Dame hasn't gone down into halftime since the Northern Illinois game. Ohio State has the kind of firepower that can put points up quick. So I think Freeman's going to have to keep this team focused if Ohio State strikes first and builds an early lead. Jake and I both predicted Ohio State to win the Natty to start the year. We kind of fell out of favor with them a little bit after some lackluster performances and then yet another loss to Michigan. Last 3 games, though, they've just been playing more like the team that we predicted. Notre Dame's had an impressive year. I just think Ohio State's offense is just going to be a little bit too much for Notre Dame to keep pace with. So I'm going to take the Buckeyes here to win and cover.
Yeah, I'm echoing a lot of that, especially the Texas game. I don't know why Texas decided to blitz the world there in that situation. They set themselves up terribly. That touchdown was a huge swing in the game on that screen right at the end of the half.
Yep.
But if you look at the final score of that game, people don't realize how close that was. That fumble by Ewers that swung that touchdown was huge. I mean, that made the game look like it wasn't even close, and Texas could have won the game still. I think Notre Dame is a much more polished team than Texas is. I have a lot of faith in Marcus Freeman to have this team ready. Ohio State, just like you said, obviously we both picked them at the beginning of the year. They did not look like a team that was going to be national title contenders. They definitely, Notre Dame, when they played Northern Illinois, we had the same thought. We said this team is done. Like they can't even make the playoffs. But here we are. Both of them turned it around. Both of them have played very well. Notre Dame obviously showed what they can do. They went to Texas A&M the first game of the year and beat the Aggies with the L squad right on their home field. Ohio State hasn't necessarily had that situation yet. I don't think they've really had a tough road game. I know there's been a lot of neutral site games. I think Notre Dame's fans are going to be – I think it's a Notre Dame crowd, honestly. I know Ohio State travels well, but Notre Dame's been waiting for this for a while, and I think this is one of the first years – I mean, you can hear it talking to Carter. You can hear it talking to Beavis. You can hear it talking to – well, Scott's a little down on Riley Leonard, but you can still hear it when he talks about it, that I think they all feel it's different this year. Like I feel like it's a different, like with Brian Kelly going into the national title game against Alabama, I'd be very interested to see if they said, oh yeah, I'm confident we're going to win this game. I think they're all going into this game against a team that they probably all think is the better team, thinking they're going to win this game. I trust Marcus Freeman a lot. I'm picking Notre Dame to win the national title. I'm shocked that I'm saying that.
Let's go.
I wanted Ohio State to press me a little more against Texas last week, and they didn't. And that's where my swing comes. I think Notre Dame can be a much better version than that Texas team we saw last week. And that's why I think Marcus Freeman will bring the Irish back to the top. I didn't have any dreams like Beavis, but I do have them back as the national champions for the first time in a very long time. When was the last one, Carter?
88.
Jesus. So that'll be the first one of like your lifetime that you actually like remember. That's crazy.
my first memories were like 93, 94. 93 was the
we never won the national championship in 93.
Yeah, but Notre Dame beat Florida State that year. So
yeah, we know. That's not what the record book says. We are the national champions. That's all that matters.
Couldn't beat the champs, though.
It's all right. It's all right. You guys couldn't beat Northern Illinois, so I don't want to hear it. So that's
touche.
All right. So we've got what? 4 of us on Notre Dame to win the title, 2 of us on Ohio State to win the title.
That's right.
Be a fun end of the season, see how everything goes. One thing I do want to throw in, just because we were talking about that Texas-Ohio State game, I talked a lot of shit all year about how Texas is one of the worst home field environments I've ever seen. Where was that crowd in Austin? Like that crowd that was in Arlington was incredible. Why can they not do that on their home field? That's what I want to know. Their home atmosphere is awful. Go back and watch the Clemson playoff game. It was like no one was even there. They were loud as hell in that neutral site game in Arlington last week against Ohio State. It was very impressive. Well, Reese, college football's over. We got 4. No, we got 3 games left. We got 3 games left.
Yeah, we get a recap next week.
I'm looking forward to your trivia to Reese about D3 schools.
I guess I got to prepare that for next week.
A little portal news. I'm sure you saw Carson Beck where he's heading next year.
Yes. Yeah, Carson Beck, the next shitty quarterback at Miami.
You know who Miami plays? Yes.
They do play Notre Dame to start the season. I cannot wait for them
to beat Georgia. We beat Georgia without Carson Beck, so now we're going to beat Miami with Carson Beck next year. But got to take care of Ohio State first.
Yeah, I did also see Ewers declare for the draft today, right?
He did.
Yes.
What a terrible – who would want – I don't know why anyone would want Carson Beck. Like, he's not – well, Miami's perfect for him, actually, but he's not good. So, go ahead. The fans are going to love him there, I'm sure.
Yeah, have fun in that quarterback class next year in the draft, because next year's quarterback class is going to be stupid.
No, Arch will probably be the number 1 pick. To Carter's Colts. We talked about that a few weeks ago.
Yes.
Yeah, Arch, Iamaliava, Lenora Sellers, Nussmeier, Jalen Daniels, Malachi Nelson, Drew Aller, Sam Levitt, Jackson Arnold, Miller Moss, Clay Plumnick.
Levitt's a stud.
Yeah.
Speaking of Nico, did you see he has a brother named Madden Iamaliava that's going to be joining us in the college football world next year?
No, but that's awesome. It's a hell of a name.
Madden.
What position? Quarterback?
Come on. You know what he is. He's an Iamaliava. They can only play one position.
Well, a Madden. I thought he might be like a linebacker in the trenches.
He is he's at Long Beach Poly right now. He's also a standout volleyball player. So in the ranks of Mr. Water Polo from Iowa, we'll be referring to Madden as a standout volleyball player when he comes along. I don't believe he's committed to a school yet. That's what I was actually just looking to see. Oh, wait. Maybe he's going to Arkansas. He did. He committed to Arkansas. So that's where he's going to be going. He was committed to UCLA and switched to Arkansas. So he will be in the SEC. Maybe we'll get a Iamaliava battle. Reese, you're finishing up with recap of everything. What was our NFL recap?
NFL recap. We've got I'm taking everybody's taking KC. Everybody is taking Detroit. Everybody but me is taking the Rams. Philly, Ike is taking Philly. Everyone else is taking the Rams to at least cover. And then we've got Carter, Scott, and myself on Baltimore. So
Wow.
that.
I was the only Buffalo?
I was Buffalo.
Ike, you and Ike were both on
Oh,
Buffalo.
okay. Yeah, I think we're in for some good games. It's truly unfortunate. There's only 3 games left. But I'll play us out here for Carter. I told him I'd play it for him to end the show.
Yeah, I was waiting on it.
We'll play it out. Everyone will be back next week with national championship recap and the conference championships. We might be 1 game away from a Chiefs-Lions Super Bowl, if anyone can believe it. If anyone can believe it, we're close. We're close. See you, everyone.